No, I know what you're thinking. Time Bomb, you can't power scale. Your Sukuna vs Makima video was clearly biased and had misinformation. No way you're making another versus video after that shit show. And I say to you, don't care if this shit gets views, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But not for real, I do admit there are a few miscalculations in my Sukuna vs Makima video. Y'all have been more than willing to point that out. And while I don't agree with every point y'all made in the comments, there were some dog shit ones, I'm not gonna lie. I admit there were some good ones as well. So I might make a video where I revisit the fight in the future. I don't know if the winner will change, maybe. I haven't gotten that far yet, but if I do that, I will definitely go through some of y'all's points and explain why I agree or disagree. Blah, blah, blah. But with that aside, yes, I am stepping back into the versus battle / power scaling side of YouTube to take a look at Pochita versus the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. Because my past two videos ain't doing too well, and you know, I'm trying to reach 1,000 subs so I can get monetized, so make sure to watch to the end to see the full results, and subscribe, and like the video, and turn on notifications, and share the video with your friends, and alright, let's get started. Spoiler warning, of course, for both JJK and CSM. I'm gonna try to make this a shorter video than the last one, so let's skip the dramatic intros for the fighters. Y'all know why we're here and who the characters are, I'm assuming. So how this is gonna work is, I will explain all the powers that we've seen Pochita demonstrate, and then Pochita will run a gauntlet style battle against every Jujutsu Kaisen character, starting with the weakest characters and working his way up to the strongest characters. Pochita will not be facing every character at once, in case you thought that's what I meant by the title, as I do not feel like trying to power scale 100 different people with different powers, jumping one dude. But before all that, y'all kinda got onto me for not properly explaining all of my first equalization in the last one, so I'll go ahead and explain the conditions this battle is going to be under. Pochita, as well as the character he is facing, will be placed in a hypothetical arena, and they cannot leave this arena until one of the fighters perishes. This arena does not exist in either verses, so there is no hell from the CSM verse. However, Pochita's power that he gets from the fear of humans and devils is unaffected, and cannot be affected from the confines of the arena. So he is as strong as we saw him in Chainsaw Man, and Makima's way of weakening him is not an option for JJK characters. Similarly, JJK characters keep all of their cursed energy and powers that play off traits of the verse like Mahito's idol transfiguration and how souls work in the JJK verse are all unaffected and work in the arena just like they would in the JJK verse. And for fairness, Pochita will be able to see curses and cursed energy. One more thing, Pochita will also be reset back to full strength and health and stamina after every fight, so it's not like a how far can he get before he runs out of stamina, it's how far can he get in 1v1 battles versus every character. He gets completely reset every single battle, just to make that clear. One more thing, according to Yoru, Chainsaw Man gets back up no matter how many times you kill him, meaning he expectedly has the same power that all devils have of being able to respawn after death. But unlike other devils, Pochita seems to be able to keep his memories when this happens. But for the sake of my sanity, if a character from JJK is capable of killing Pochita, he will not be endlessly coming back to try again and again, okay? Not happening. The arena prevents it. I will not tolerate any comments saying, well, Pochita will just come back over and over again, so technically, no JJK character can ever win. If a character can kill him once, that is a win, okay? Alright, let's talk about what Pochita is capable of. For his AP, Pochita is capable of launching the weapon hybrids through 4 to 5 large buildings with a single attack, as well as kick his heart back down to earth so hard that it started burning up like a meteor or rocket does. And while it's unclear how long it took for him to go from space to earth, since it was just a few manga panels, the context implies that it may have been anywhere from a few minutes to even mere seconds. The distance from space to the ground we walk on is roughly 62 miles, meaning that, with the assistance of gravity of course, when Pochita hits something, it can travel at least 62 miles in a very short period of time. And again, gravity did play a part in that, so I'm highballing it a bit, but the feat is impressive nonetheless, mainly due to the implied speed of it. Speaking of speed, Pochita can easily outspeed Quan Chi, who has a very detailed page on the Versus Battle Wiki on why Chapter 60 proves that she's around Mach 4 to 6, which is about hypersonic speed. Again, Pochita outspeeds Quan Chi pretty solidly in Chapter 87. I won't say he blitzed her since we honestly didn't get very much of them two fighting specifically, but he was able to kick the fuck out of her as she tried to attack him, and then proceed to travel to the building she landed in and swiftly finish her off like she was nothing. So I'd say he's bare minimum slightly faster, and worst case he can potentially just blitz her. So I'd say he could be anywhere from hypersonic to high hypersonic, and for normal people, that is between Mach 5 and Mach 50. He could be even faster, but from what we've seen of him, this is where I'm comfortable putting him. As for durability, it's usually the case that people can take what they dish out, and that is proven pretty well by him taking relatively low damage from 4 of Makima's bang attacks, which were powerful enough to launch him into space. Or maybe they just have a really high knockback and damage doesn't really correlate, but who knows. Pochita has hyper regeneration, being able to regenerate his whole body from only his heart in seconds. He has enhanced senses, being able to see and hear people from really far away. And of course, Pochita has 4 arms, all with chainsaws coming out of them, as well as a chainsaw coming out of his head. He can also retract these chainsaws and apply them to his legs instead if need be. His chainsaws have been seen to be able to cut through pretty much anything, but instead of just saying that nothing can't be cut by them, I'm just gonna scale his chainsaw's cutting ability to his AP level. I think that's pretty fair. He can also use the chains of his chainsaws as a kind of rope that he can use to swing around like Spider-Man, or to grab onto his opponents and pull them towards him. His most famous feature, however, is his ability to erase concepts from existence by consuming the devil that the concept is attached to. Unfortunately though, that ability won't really be of any effect here, as there are no devils to eat, and even if he could eat and erase JJK sorcerers or something like that would just be the same thing as beating them anyway, so you know, it doesn't really mean anything here. And since I know y'all are gonna say some stupid shit like this in the comments, I'll go ahead and say it here. No, Pochita cannot like go into hell and consume the Infinity Devil to get rid of Gojo's Infinity Barrier or some fucking stupid shit like that. Number 1, I already banned hell from this battle, and number 2, the JJK verse doesn't seem to have a hell, so I doubt devils getting erased would even affect JJK characters in the first place. But anyway, that concludes all of Pochita's relevant abilities. Let's get into the gauntlet. Now the gauntlet is going to be roughly ordered, but this is not my definitive ranking of all JJK characters or anything. I'm just going to be using broad tiers of characters, like for example, Momo is in a pretty low tier while Kashimo is in a higher one. So don't be saying in the comments stuff like, you know, Kamo should actually been after Ino since Kamo is stronger. Because again, this is not a ranking. For most of these, it doesn't really matter who comes first. I just group them up if they're somewhat relative in strength. Alright, to start off, there are quite a few characters that just get blitzed in one shot off rip, if I'm gonna be honest. So instead of going through each one and pointlessly explaining why exactly that happens to each, I'm just gonna speed run through all of those and hope that you beautiful viewers that have seen both series are capable of basic cognitive reasoning and don't need to question why fucking Junpei stands no chance against Pochita. So the gauntlet starts and Pochita proceeds to mow through the following characters with little to no effort due to their physical stats being way too low in comparison to Pochita, as well as their hacks / abilities being way too weak or just ineffective to Pochita altogether. Mai Zenin, Yoshino Junpei, Juzo, Kasumi Miwa, Toge Inumaki, Charles Bernard, Momo Nishimiya, Nobara Kugisaki, Haruta Shigemo, Naruto Shikamo, Ketchizu, Takuma Ino, Panda, The Finger Bearers, Daido, Miya, Kusakabe, Kento Nanami, Eso, Masamichi Yaga, Yoshinobu Gaku Ganji, Shinichi Zenin, Ogi Zenin, Ranta Zenin, Reggie Smallpox Deity, Miguel, Iori Utsuhime, Angel, since Pochita isn't a cursed spirit, meaning Jacob's ladder wouldn't work, and finally, and quite unfortunately, our main character Yuji Itadori, as well as his brother Aoi Todo. Yuji and Todo's physicals just do not match up to Pochita's, and as of chapter 239, neither have anything that they could use to counter Pochita's chainsaws and superior speed. And again, those names I listed out were not in a specific order of strength or anything like that. Now let's get to the characters that actually give me a bit more to talk about. Mei is only interesting because of the wording surrounding her ability called Bird Strike. Bird Strike uses a binding vow that sacrifices the bird's life in order to grant the attack immense power. Gege goes out of his way to make the narrator gas up this technique, saying, "Nobody except Satoru Gojo has ever survived Bird Strike," which kinda means nothing since the technique can't even hit Gojo in the first place, meaning the actual power of the technique is extremely vague, having no feats other than one-shotting the Smallpox Deity curse. I feel like if Bird Strike was something crazy that could one-shot literally anything, she might have just straight up been classified as a special grade, so I imagine there's a hard limit. Due to its vagueness and the fact that Mei is only a first grade and she's not gassed up that much in the story, I'm going to go with the assumption that Bird Strike is not powerful enough to cause significant damage to Pochita, meaning she gets blitzed in one shot just like the rest. Next up is Naoya with his projection sorcery. Naoya's curse form had a top speed of Mach 3, and Pochita is much faster than this because Quan Chi is Mach 4 to 6 and Pochita is faster than that obviously, meaning he's faster than normal Naoya as well. So he gets taken care of pretty quickly. Naobito, same thing. Cursed Naoya is a bit more interesting though, because we finally get to our first character with a domain expansion, besides Small Box Daddy. Assuming that Pochita doesn't cut off Cursed Naoya's head before he can even pull it off, let's say Naoya unleashes his domain on Pochita. Here is my take on this. Since Pochita has been plucked from his verse and placed into an alternate one and not JJK's verse, Pochita has zero cursed energy, just like Maki and Toji. Therefore, Pochita can ignore almost any domain that gets unleashed on him, same as them, meaning the outcome of this fight is the same as we saw when Maki faced him. I know some people are probably gonna be mad at this decision, but if I did allow domains to affect him, I'd be going against my own rules that I said at the beginning. Each character is pulled from their verse and does not gain any attributes from the other's verse, meaning Pochita in fact has no cursed energy, and the way that the JJK verse handles people with no cursed energy applies here as well. Moving on. Kurorushi's only talking point is his swarm of roaches, but I think they're A, too slow, and B, too weak to actually do any significant damage, or cause much of a hindrance at all, so he loses pretty badly too. Choso also gets washed. If piercing blood can be dodged by Yuji, then it poses zero threat to Pochita. Mechamaru's big mech is cool, but Pochita's getting to that cockpit before his first blast of curse energy ever even goes off. The disaster curses are pretty strong, let's see how they fare. Maki and Toji are canonically slower than Cursed Naoya, even if just by a little bit, and Toji outspeeds Dagon, meaning Dagon gets done even worse by Pochita. Domains also have no effect, as we discussed earlier. It's kind of the same thing with Hanami to be honest, and while Hanami has superior durability, I'd say Pochita's AP far outscales. Yuji and Todo were capable of hurting Hanami, and honestly I don't really see them kicking people through 5 skyscrapers, so Hanami gets washed too. Jogo is faster than the other two, but at best he's around Toji speed, which simply isn't gonna cut it. We also already saw someone try fire against Pochita and Chainsaw Man, and it didn't go very well. So yeah, unfortunately Jogo stands no chance either. Mahito is where it gets interesting though. Souls are never mentioned at all in the Chainsaw Man verse, so I've gotta say that Pochita would be incapable of hurting Mahito's soul. However, Pochita is simply too fast for Mahito to ever catch. Pochita can chop Mahito to pieces over and over until he runs dry of cursed energy. And it might not even take that long, since Mahito would probably try his domain, only for it to fail, which would result in curse technique burnout, giving Pochita the perfect opportunity to end his life. Mahito does get an amp in his instant spirit body of distorted killing form, specifically in the durability department, but I can't in good faith say that he'd be durable enough to withstand Pochita's attacks even in this form, so no matter how you look at it, Pochita slams Mahito pretty hard as well, mainly because domains have no effect on him. If domains could affect Pochita, we might be looking at a different story, but that is not the case here. We haven't gotten to see very much from Uraume yet, but I don't imagine she has the stats to contend with Pochita, and Yuji proved that her ice is capable of being broken out of, so I think it's safe to say Pochita would take her out as well. And let's get to some culling game players. Higuruma is a weird one. As stated before, Pochita can ignore domains, but for the hypothetical, let's say Higuruma's works for some reason, since his is a bit different than the rest anyway. Pochita would get accused of some heinous crimes, and his defense would probably just be a few grunts and groans, to be honest, which would likely result in the death penalty from Judge Man. Confiscation would also occur, but I'm not really sure what Judge Man would even confiscate. If I had to pick anything, it'd probably be his chainsaws, since he already has no cursed energy or anything like that. So let's say in this scenario, Pochita has no chainsaws and Higuruma has the Executioner sword, meaning if Pochita gets hit by that sword at all, he dies instantly. This is the best case scenario Higuruma could ever ask for, but unfortunately, it still really isn't a battle. Higuruma still loses. Pochita is simply too fast. We're talking about a being that can move to upwards of Mach 50, guys. And even if he's not that fast, he's still faster than Quan Chi's Mach 4 to 6, which itself is faster than most of the JJK verse. Higuruma was having trouble facing off against a Yuji with no cursed energy, let's be for real. Higuruma will get his head punched off before he even realizes that Pochita moved at all. Let's move on. Uro and Ishigori get destroyed. They aren't built for Quan Chi's Mach 5, much less Pochita, plus their domains are useless. Ishigori's Granite Blast probably not doing much. I mean, Yuta tanked it with his bare hands. Uro's Sky Manipulation not very helpful in this battle. Moving on. Before I get to Hakari, let me make something clear. I do not think this panel is demonstrating Hakari dodging lightning. I think this panel is showing us that Hakari is capable of predicting Kashimo's lightning attack and moving his body to a position where the lightning will hit anything other than his dome. If Hakari is capable of actually dodging lightning, that would throw off the entire JJK verse speed scaling so much that it hurts my fucking brain. Think about it. Cursed Naoya's top speed was Mach 3, which was faster than Maki. Maki's equal to Toji. Toji was implied to be able to kill Naobito, who was the second fastest sorcerer after Gojo, meaning that some of the fastest characters in the verse are below Mach 3, and the speed of light is Mach 874,000. Outside of Gojo and Sukuna, scaling anybody even close to this level makes zero sense. All this to say, Hakari loses too. Even in jackpot mode, all Pochita has to do is cut off his head to stop any and all RCT, which he definitely would be capable of doing. Kashimo is a bit weirder though. He's stated to be able to manipulate electromagnetic waves into an attack with his curse technique, which would assumedly be a light speed attack. However, since attacks like these were unable to do very much harm to Sukuna, I doubt they do very much harm to Pochita either. And when I get to Sukuna and his scaling, my reasoning for that will become more clear. So even if Kashimo could pull off some hits on Pochita with moves like these, I don't think they'd be very effective. I also don't think Kashimo has the speed to deal with Pochita even with his curse technique activated, because it was never stated or implied that he can use his curse technique to increase his speed to light speed, as some people seem to think. And Sukuna was outspeeding him pretty bad during that fight, so for those reasons, Kashimo's out. Hirozu, even in her bug form, wasn't really putting that much pressure on 15 Finger Sukuna, plus domains don't work, so I'm gonna go ahead and speedrun this one and say she ain't doing much. Toji and Maki have already explained are slower than Mach 3, and if a Mach 3 attack can significantly damage Maki, then an attack from Pochita would be deadly. So they are both incapable of taking down the hero of hell. Yuki's kind of an interesting one though, as she can manipulate mass to make her punches very powerful. However, if she truly was capable of producing infinite mass and one-shotting anybody, then this punch right here would have killed Kenjaku instantly, but it did not. And if it ain't killing Kenjaku, it ain't killing Pochita. Also, her speed is probably not anything special compared to the people we've already talked about. The only argument I can see for her is the black hole, but I don't really like counting that as an actual attack since it kills her in the process too, so there's really no point in using it. Plus, Pochita could probably kill her before she even finishes creating it, or even has the idea of creating it. Geto would be interesting if we didn't have something that kind of tells us the answer to this already. Kenjaku stops using curse spirit manipulation on Yuki due to the fact that she could one-shot any curse that he brought out. Call me crazy, but I think Pochita would also be able to one-shot any curse he brought out, meaning his curses would get mowed down with ease, and Pochita would chop Geto in two pretty quickly. You probably noticed I haven't mentioned Megumi yet, and that's because I wanted to include Mahoraga in that discussion. So Megumi gets waxed pretty badly, of course, but let's say he brings out Big Maho before he kicks the bucket. There are two scenarios here. The first is that Pochita goes for Mahoraga's head off rip and kills him in one attack. Or the second option, he doesn't do that and cuts his body or limbs or something, causing Mahoraga to adapt to his chainsaw attacks. The chainsaws are kind of Pochita's only method of attack, so this would kind of be a problem. Mahoraga's adaptation gets better every time it experiences an attack, so eventually, Pochita's attacks would do very little damage to Mahoraga at all. However, Mahoraga would have a lot of trouble hitting Pochita due to his speed, and even if he did, Pochita can just regenerate. So this ultimately comes down to a battle of stamina, of who could last longer in a battle where very little progress is ever being made. And unfortunately, only one has a limited amount of cursed energy, and that's Mahoraga. This is the closest match we've had so far, but Mahoraga has a limited amount of power, and Pochita does not. And that's just the nature of each versus power system, so it's a very weird and interesting match, but I think Pochita would come out on top in the end. We are approaching the end here now. Let's talk about Yuta. Honestly, the only reason Mahoraga actually put up any kind of a fight was because of his weird technique. Yuta's best move against Pochita here is Cursed Speech. But even then, it can only take him so far against an opponent who's so much faster than him. Even if you think Yuta is faster than Cursed Naoya's Mach 3, it wouldn't even be very much faster if we use our context clues and the fights we've seen Yuta in so far. I don't even think he's faster in the first place at all, but even if you do, it's not by much. So yeah, even with Rika, RCT, and all that, I just don't see any win cons for Yuta against someone who could potentially be as fast as Mach 10 to 50, and who can kick his own heart from space back down to the ground and regenerate while that's happening. Yeah, I just don't see it. Sorry, Yuta fans. I just don't think he has any chance at all. Last person before we get into the real meat of this video, we've got Kenjaku. I think Kenjaku has the potential to put up one of the best fights so far. If Kenjaku can survive long enough to open his domain, which honestly I doubt, but let's say he does, hypothetically, I believe Kenjaku's gravity sure hit is similar to Sukuna's domain, where it attacks everything, including things without curse energy, which would include Pochita. Okay, so Kenjaku gets Pochita in his domain, and the gravity forces him to the ground. What now? Well, Kenjaku could then proceed to bombard him with attacks using cursed spirit manipulation, including Uzumaki, and try to kill him while he's trapped in the sure hit. And while this might be crazy to say, I honestly don't think this would be enough to kill Pochita. Hear me out on this. Attacks that sent Pochita to literal space didn't do very much damage to him at all. He coughed up some blood and had some of his armor skin knocked off, and that's about it. That is insane durability. He also easily survived being burnt up by Earth's atmosphere as he flew back down to Earth. He was also able to regenerate his entire body from only his heart in seemingly a very small period of time. So this durability mixed with this insane regeneration leads me to believe that Kenjaku could throw everything he's got at Pochita, that we've seen from Kenjaku at least, and it still wouldn't be enough. I just can't see it. I mean, Uzumaki was his ultimate attack, and let's not forget that Kusakabe straight up blocked that fucking shit. So call me crazy all you want, but I just can't see Kenjaku's gravity or his Uzumaki or anything else that he has that we've seen actually managing to take the life of the guy who survived what I just explained he survived. So I think Kenjaku would give it everything he's got, but eventually he'd run out of cursed energy, the domain would close, and Pochita would heal from any and all damage, and he'd take care of Kenjaku pretty swiftly after that. And with that, we finally made it to our main events, Gojo and Sukuna. This is where the real battles happen. I don't know how long this video has gotten at this point. I tried to get through everybody who wasn't these two as quickly as possible while trying to explain my reasonings at the same time, and I think it's turning out to be longer than I anticipated, but we're finally here, and we're gonna start with Gojo. Gojo and Sukuna are likely both significantly faster than Mach 3 as well, as Maki was able to react to and dodge Curse Naoya's attacks, and Toji, who was equal to Maki, was comparable to a 3-finger Sukuna. And while yes, Maki was not faster than Curse Naoya, the gap that we can assume separates 3-finger and 20-finger Sukuna just seems far greater than the gap between Maki and Cursed Naoya. Though the only real proof I have of this, besides them being shown multiple times to be the pinnacle of the verse, is this recent feat by Sukuna where he dodges a lot of Kashimo's attacks, with some of them maybe being the electromagnetic attack that was explained that Kashimo has, which again would assumedly be light speed. I do think it's weird for any JJK character to be capable of light speed, considering Curse Naoya's max speed is Mach 3, well again light speed is Mach 874,000, so I'm a little weary of calling any of the attacks that Sukuna dodged the electromagnetic one, but regardless, Kashimo's attacks are all really fucking fast, as he's manipulating sound waves, light waves, all that shit, so they're very fast regardless, and dodging them is still very impressive. So if Gojo and Sukuna are both beyond Mach 3, and Pochita is, well who's faster? Well, it's kinda impossible to calculate. As far as I know, there is no way to give a solid number to any of these characters' speed besides rough guesstimates, so for the sake of argument and keeping things as fair as possible, I'm simply going to equalize Pochita's speed to Gojo and Sukuna's. You can disagree with this if you want, but unless someone can present solid proof that one side is faster than the other, then I think this is the most fair decision. With that out of the way though, we can get back to the battle. As many of you might have guessed, Pochita can't do much here. Infinity is just a hard counter to characters like Pochita with simple movesets. One thing I will give Pochita though is that he'd probably be immune to Unlimited Void. Unlimited Void doesn't seem to attack inanimate objects like Sukuna's Shrine does, so unless Gojo changes the rules of his domain sure hit on the fly, which actually he might be able to do, to be honest, considering what he was doing in his fight with Sukuna, then Unlimited Void would not be a win con for Gojo. Now the question then would be if Gojo could kill Pochita with just blue, red, purple, his fists, etc. And personally, I think purple has what it takes to get the job done. Purple eviscerates whole city blocks with ease, and it's implied that the only reason Sukuna survived 2 purples like he did was because of domain amplification, which can absorb some of the technique on impact. Which of course is something that Pochita is not capable of. So the fight would go something like, Pochita would try to attack Infinity, fail, then Gojo would try to fight back, realize how tough and hard to kill Pochita is, and then after maybe roughing him up with some blue and reds, he would use purple as a finisher. And he can even throw in some incantations to the purple to make it even stronger, just to make sure. And there we have it, folks, our first character to take down Pochita, thus ending his JJK gauntlet run. But of course, for fun, we've gotta see how Sukuna would play out. So Sukuna is an interesting one. He's the absolute strongest of the verse, but honestly, Gojo is better suited for battles outside of the JJK verse due to his infinity. But Sukuna is still a beast nonetheless, so let's see if he can prove his title as number 1. Since infinity is not a thing here, Sukuna will have to fight Pochita in close combat. Oh, and by the way, we're using Heian Sukuna, or True Form Sukuna, for this battle. Since I've equalized their speed, both will be capable of hitting the other consistently. One thing I have to address off the bat is how Pochita's chainsaws would interact with Sukuna. The thing is, Sukuna is very durable, similar to Pochita. Surviving a 200% hollow purple, then fighting Gojo for a long ass time, enduring tons of punishment from him as Gojo's technique gave him the upper hand in close quarters combat, then going on to tank another purple is nuts. And while he did have domain amplification active during those purples, it's still insanely impressive. Also, Sukuna's slashes in Malevolent Shrine are shown capable of eviscerating a part of Shibuya at only 15 fingers, and Gojo, who is relative to Sukuna, can endure and regenerate from Shrine's onslaught of slashes continuously as it happens. So we can assume Sukuna can also tank and heal from his own shrine. Pochita, on the other hand, is shown destroying some buildings with his attacks. I'm not saying that Sukuna is necessarily more durable than Pochita, but my entire point with this is, I don't think Pochita's chainsaws are gonna be slicing through Sukuna's body like it does with the people in the CSM verse. I think Pochita will be capable of relatively shallow cuts when he hits Sukuna, and not much more than that, kinda similar to how Gojo was being affected by Sukuna's slashes at the beginning of the fight. Similarly though, I think Pochita can do the same thing with Sukuna's slashes that Gojo did. So funnily enough, both of them have slash attacks, and both of them kinda do equal amount of damage to each other with those slashing attacks, in my opinion. At least for the attacks that Malevolent Shrine has, and we'll get to that. So when this battle starts, I think they'd be trading blows for a while, healing from each other's attacks, and then Sukuna would likely open up his domain. That would result in a similar scenario that we saw Gojo in, with Pochita healing from the slashes. However, this time around, I don't think Sukuna's opponent is making it out of Malevolent Shrine alive. Let me explain. While Pochita's being cut, Sukuna will have access to his other techniques, with the only one we're aware of being the fire arrow, which at 15 fingers could melt a very large area of Shibuya and also burn the cursed spirit whose whole thing was flames to a crisp. But if this isn't enough to take out Pochita, Sukuna could just use incantations with his stomach mouth to generate cleaves and dismantles strong enough to just create ravines and shit. I mean, look at this. So basically what I'm saying with all this is that Pochita basically has no win con. His chainsaws simply won't one-shot Sukuna, which is a problem because that's kind of the only attack he has, besides I guess his mouth. And while Pochita can also regenerate very well, I just don't see him surviving a situation where Sukuna is using Malevolent Shrine, Fire Arrow, those massive cleaves, which would do significantly more damage than the Malevolent Shrine ones, Kamutoke, and also any other techniques that he might have. With all of these options, Sukuna is reaching that heart eventually and tearing it to shreds. The only argument I can see for Pochita is if you say that Pochita's chainsaws neg durability, in which case Pochita could go for the head and end it that way, but there is simply just no proof that that is the case, so Sukuna does indeed defend his title as number 1 of the verse, and takes down Pochita, in my opinion. Also, I think I forgot to address this for Gojo, but if Gojo uses his domain against Pochita and it fails, Gojo would then experience technique burnout, which would turn off his infinity. This wouldn't change the outcome though, since Gojo and Sukuna are at least somewhat relative durability wise, meaning the chainsaws wouldn't just rip through any part of his body like butter. Same with Sukuna, so he'd be able to live long enough to get his infinity back for sure. So as you can see folks, only 2 people in the entire Jujutsu Kaisen verse is capable of defeating the absolute monster that is Pochita, which makes Pochita versus the Jujutsu Kaisen verse a somewhat close match indeed. I apologize if this video was a bit long. I've tried to keep explanations as short as possible while fitting all the necessary info in there as well, which might have made some parts of the video seem messy and kinda all over the place, so I do apologize if you felt that was the case. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I will be making more videos more frequently, I promise, so make sure you ring the notification bell so you always know whenever that next video comes out. Love you guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace!